Imagine you are in a winning position, but one wrong move and it's a draw. Or even worse, you are defending and one mistake means game over. That's exactly why you must know the Lucena and Philidor endgames. These two endgames separate winners from the rest. Let me show you how to master them. Okay, so starting with the Lucena position we have on the board, we are playing with the white pieces and we need to win this endgame. The pawn is only one square away from being a queen. The basic idea to win this endgame is to move the king and make a queen. That's how easy it is. We can start with a check that makes sense, kicking the king to the g file. If the king goes to e6, it's already a blunder because after king e8, the black cannot stop us from making a queen and that's game over for black. So black have to go to g7 and now there are many possibilities for white to continue the position. If you are looking this position for the first time, already there are many couple of moves, but if you are already kind of well known with this idea, you're good to go. So you can try to pause the video and try to find the best winning idea for white to continue the position. Then try to resume the video. Okay, so starting with every single move, first let's start with king e8. Just moving the king and trying to make the queen, that makes sense. But here black can simply give a check and the king is only having one square to go on d8. And then we have rook c1. Once again, we have absolutely zero progress. So going back, king e8 is not going to work. Looking at maybe rook to g2 check, giving a check to the black king. Black can simply play the move king f7. Once again, the king is not really having any square to go away. So white have to give a check, but that's still a repetition of the position. So rook g2 check is also not going to work up. Now talking about king e7. Maybe king e7 is going to work. But after king e7, black can give a check. But this time we can go to d6. Check. We have to play king e6 in order to protect the pawn. Black can give a check and now we have to play king f5. If we play the move king to d5, once again black will simply give a check. We have to defend the pawn and black will just keep on checking. That's it. So we have to play king f5, but once again rook d1, attacking the pawn. We have to go back with the king and it seems we are having absolutely zero progress. So the main question is this position winning or is it completely draw? Is it winning for white? The winning resource is to play the move rook to f4. Now you would be thinking, how come rook f4, like such a non-human move, is a winning position for white? How come is this possible? So currently you will see the black king is cut off. And what we are trying to do here is we are trying to build a bridge. What do I meant? For example, if black plays something like rook c2, just random move because black can't really do much. Now finally we will play king e7 with the idea of making a queen. Black have to give a check, we'll play king d6. Black will give a check, we have to play king e6 in order to protect the pawn. Rook gives a check, we have to go on d5. And once black plays the move rook to d2 check now, you see the idea of rook f4. Now the rook can simply come on d4 and now black can't really stop us from making a queen and that's the winning position for white. That's it. Like if black move the rook, we can make the queen. If black takes the rook, the black king can't reach on time and that's the winning Lucena position for us. So that's exactly how you can win these types of position. These types of position is generally known as the Lucena position, which are winning, but you must know how to win these types of position. There is a basic technique of winning these types of endgames. So I believe now you have kind of mastered the Lucena position. So now let's try to look at the Philidor position. Okay, so now we have the Philidor position on the board. Black is having the king and the rook on the last rank. And actually this is winning for white. Why? Because white can simply play the move rook to a7, swinging the rook. This is a useful technique that you must know. And after rook a7, white is simply threatening to mate the black king. And the black king have to move away. But this time we can simply give a check. We can take the rook and black can't really stop us. So this is a winning position for white. How to defend these types of position is the question. This is sort of a Philidor position. Generally, in these types of position, when you're playing with the black pieces or whenever you are defending, try to activate your rook. You can't really activate your king because your opponent's king is well activated with his pawn. So the only piece that you must activate in order to at least secure a half point is to use your rook. Try to activate your rook. Do not place your rook passively. So let's try to look at some other positions and you will eventually get an idea how to defend such positions. Okay, so we have the next position, sort of a Philidor once again. And the only difference what's happening in this position here is, in the previous diagram, the pawn was on the d file, the king was on the c file. But this time we have the pawn on the c file and the king is on the b file. But once again, this is winning because once again, the white rook can slide over to the queen side with the idea of just giving a check and capturing the rook. Black can try to play king b8, just trying to take away the a8 square. But white can use his pawn, giving a check. The king is forced to go away and we can capture the rook and we can make the queen. Black is doomed. It's completely winning for white. So once again, it's a winning position for white. So now let's try to look at another position. Okay, so now we have once again a sort of a Philidor position, but this time the pawn is on the b file and the king is on the a file. And actually it doesn't really matter now if your rook is passive or active because it's a draw. Why? Because now, like, even if white tries to play rook a7, trying to play rook a8, it's not going to work because your king is already controlling the square. And white's pawn is not really on the c file so that he can push the pawn and give a check. So basically white can give a rook b7 check, rook a7 check, but it doesn't really change any fact. Black can just move his king and that's a draw. That's an easy draw. Basically whenever your opponent is having a rook or the knight pawn. Basically, why am I saying the rook or the knight pawn? Because generally the rook is on the a file or the h file. And the knight are generally on the b and the g file. So whenever your opponent is having the pawns on the knight or the rook file, it's a draw. It's a draw. You just need to put your king on the last rank, the rook on the last rank, and it doesn't really change the fact how hard the opponent can try. It's a draw. So yeah, so now let's try to look at the real Philidor position. Okay, so finally we have the real Philidor position on the board. This is the pure Philidor position. It's a black to play. The question is how to continue the position. White's pawn is going this way. White king is much active than the black king. White is a pawn up. His rook is currently, I would say, like the rooks are currently equally placed, I would say, so nothing is happening. If you just keep on playing passively, you are only going to get destroyed. For example, if you try to play just like rook over here, white can put his rook over here, and once again, check, kicking the rook king back, advancing his king and pawn, and eventually mating you. So this idea is not really going to work. In order to secure at least a half point, you must know how to use this technique, the Philidor technique. You can just play the move rook to h6. It looks like a useless move, but believe me, it's it's the only move that you need to find, and it's a draw. Because basically you take away the 6th rank from your opponent's king. Now the opponent's king can't really enter on the 6th rank. The opponent can try to give you some checks. Move his king, move his rook. You can just simply wait with moving by your rook. And like white is not really having anything. He can't really advance with his king because the rook is already covering the square. So now white is like, okay, let me push the pawn with the idea of getting my king further, with the idea of checkmating the black king. But once your opponent has pushed the pawn to the 6th rank, if you're playing with the black pieces, you just need to put your rook to the last rank. Because what happens now, the king is not really having any hiding space, any square that can cover him up. And now we just need to give some checks, like the barrage of checks, and it's a draw. Basically, if we try to pull the rook back in this position, it's not going to work because this time after a check, the king is having the square on in front of the pawn, and you can't really give any checks. So that's why you just wait for now, kind of forcing your opponent to push the pawn, and then just putting your rook on the last rank, and your opponent can play anything. Once he moves the rook from the 7th rank, you can just put your king like in the front of the pawn, and it's a draw. If white plays anything, you can just start giving checks. You can start giving him checks. He can't. If he goes back like here, just attack the pawn once again, and it's a draw. It's a draw. That's no-brainer. So that's exactly how you must play the Philidor position. Whenever you are defending, try to activate your rook. If you put your pieces passively, both the king and the rook, you're simply going to lose. So if you want to defend the position, if you want to at least secure a half point, try to play aggressively, try to use your rook, try to activate your rook, cutting off the opponent's file and forcing him to push his pawn and just going to the back rank the moment he pushes his pawn, and you start giving him checks, and that's a draw. So that's exactly how you must play the Lucena and Philidor position. So I believe now you can win a winning position without making any mistakes, and you can draw a drawish position without making any mistakes. So I hope that this endgame is actually pretty critical in order to defend or win rook endgames. Like once you become a good player, once you become a serious player, this endgame is going to play a very important role in winning games. So I hope that this video was helpful. If it was, make sure to like, share and subscribe, and I'm going to come up with these more exciting videos like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Oneshot chess. Bye bye.